At 7:23 on the morning of June 7, 1944, Major Sydney Radley-Walters crouched inside the turret of his Sherman tank Caribou, watching a German Panzer IV emerge from the hedgerows 200 yards ahead. 24 years old, 1 day in combat, 0 tank kills. The Panzer's 88mm gun swiveled toward his position. Radley-Walters had trained on tanks for less than 2 years. Before 1942, he had never even seen one. The Sherbrooke Fusilier Regiment had landed on Juno Beach 18 hours earlier. 11 Shermans made it off the beach. By dawn, 3 were burning wrecks. The Germans weren't retreating. They were counterattacking with armor the Allies hadn't expected in these numbers. Radley-Walters commanded A Squadron, 8 tanks, 75mm guns that couldn't penetrate a Tiger's frontal armor at any range. The math was brutal. A Tiger could kill a Sherman from 2,000 yards. A Sherman needed to get within 500 yards and hit the sides or rear. Most didn't get that close. The Panzer IV was smaller than a Tiger, but it was still faster than Caribou, better armored, and the crew inside had been fighting since Poland. Radley-Walters had graduated from Bishop's University 4 years earlier. His regiment had been infantry until January 1942. Then, the Canadian Army told them they were switching to armor. Not one man in the unit knew what a tank looked like. They learned by reading manuals, practicing on whatever equipment arrived from England, hoping it would be enough when they crossed the Channel. It wasn't enough. The first week in Normandy proved that. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers supported the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division as they pushed inland from the beaches. German panzer divisions counterattacked repeatedly. Panthers, Tigers, even the older Panzer IVs could engage Shermans from ranges where the 75mm gun was useless. Allied tankers called it getting brewed up. The Sherman's gasoline engine caught fire easily. Crews had seconds to bail out. By mid-June, Radley-Walters knew the pattern. German tanks spotted them first, fired first. The only way a Sherman survived was speed, terrain, and getting to the enemy's flank before he turned his gun. If you want to see how Radley-Walters became the top Allied tank ace despite these impossible odds, please hit that like button. It helps us share these forgotten stories with more people. And please, subscribe. Back to Radley-Walters. The Panzer IV's turret stopped moving. Radley-Walters knew what came next. Either Caribou's crew killed this tank in the next 10 seconds, or they became another statistic. His gunner waited for the order. The German commander was probably doing the same thing, calculating range, elevation, whether to fire high explosive or armor-piercing. Radley-Walters gave the command to fire. The 75mm gun roared. The Panzer IV shuddered. Black smoke poured from its engine deck. No crew emerged. That was his first kill. It wouldn't be his last, but he didn't know yet that he'd survived 3 tanks destroyed under him, 2 wounds, 18 confirmed tank kills, or that 45 years later, he'd learned he might have killed Germany's most famous tank ace. He just knew he was still alive, and the war was far from over. The Normandy campaign turned into a grinding battle of attrition. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers fought through the hedgerows south of Caen for 56 days without relief. Radley-Walters destroyed his second tank on June 10th, a Panther that had pinned down an infantry company. His third came 4 days later, during the push toward Carpiquet Airfield. Other squadron commanders weren't as fortunate. By late June, the regiment had lost 23 Shermans, 11 loaders had died. Most never saw what killed them. German tanks used the hedgerows like fortresses. They'd wait in defilade positions where only their turrets showed. Fire, reverse, relocate. By the time Allied tankers spotted the muzzle flash, the round was already traveling at 3,000 feet per second. The Tiger I weighed 70 tons. Its frontal armor measured 120 millimeters thick. The Sherman's 75mm armor-piercing round could penetrate 79 millimeters at point-blank range. Against the Tiger's front plate, the math was simple. The round bounced off. Every time. Allied intelligence had underestimated how many Panthers and Tigers the Germans would field. Pre-invasion estimates suggested the Tiger would be rare, a heavy breakthrough tank produced in limited numbers. Instead, entire battalions of Tigers were arriving in Normandy. The 12th SS Panzer Division Hitler Youth had received dozens of them, all crewed by fanatical volunteers who'd been training since 1942. Radley-Walters learned to fight them anyway. The tactics were brutal but effective. Use terrain. Never silhouette on a ridge. Move fast. One platoon draws fire while another flanks. Hit the sides or rear where the armor was 60 to 80 millimeters. Thick enough to stop rifle rounds, thin enough for a 75 millimeter shell at close range. By early July, he destroyed 6 German tanks. The regiment promoted him to major and gave him permanent command of A Squadron. He was 24 years old. Most of his crews were 19 or 20. They called him Rad. He made them sleep whenever possible, even in the afternoon, even when they laughed at him. A month later, they understood why. Exhaustion killed more crews than enemy fire. The Sherman had advantages the German tanks lacked. It was reliable. Mechanical breakdowns were rare. When they happened, field mechanics could fix them in hours. Panthers and Tigers spent half their service life deadlined for maintenance. Parts shortages, transmission failures, over-engineered systems that broke under battlefield conditions. The Sherman was also faster. Top speed of 30 miles per hour on roads, 20 across country. A Panther could barely manage 15 on rough terrain. Speed meant Radley-Walters could choose when to engage, disengage when outgunned, flank when the enemy was focused elsewhere. But speed and reliability meant nothing if the enemy saw you first. German optics were superior. Their gunners trained for years. Allied crews trained for months. The Germans also had another advantage: experience. Most had fought in Russia. They knew how to kill tanks. They'd been doing it since 1941. On July 8th, during the assault on Caen, Radley-Walters led a squadron against German positions near Buran. Artillery had pulverized the village for 3 hours. Infantry reported light resistance. Then the Panthers appeared. 4 of them, hull down behind rubble. Radley-Walters lost 2 Shermans in the first 30 seconds. His own tank took a round through the turret side. The shell missed his head by 8 inches, killed his loader instantly. The crew bailed out. Smoke grenades. Run. Find cover. Hope the machine guns don't catch you. He watched Caribou burn, his first tank. 11 kills. Gone. By nightfall, the regiment gave him another Sherman. He named it Caribou II. Within a week, he'd added 2 more German tanks to his count. But something was changing in Normandy. Allied intelligence reported a new German unit arriving. Heavy SS Panzer Battalion 101. All Tigers. Led by Germany's highest-scoring tank ace, a man with 143 confirmed kills. His name was Michael Wittmann. Michael Wittmann had become a legend in Germany. On June 13, 1944, he destroyed more than 24 British tanks and transport vehicles at Villers-Bocage in 15 minutes. His Tiger had ambushed the 7th Armored Division's lead elements, destroyed everything in sight, then withdrew before Allied artillery could respond. German propaganda turned him into a national hero, the Black Baron, the invincible tank commander. By early August, Wittmann commanded the 3rd Company of Heavy SS Panzer Battalion 101. His Tiger bore the number 007. He'd survived 3 years of combat. Poland, France, the Eastern Front, Normandy. Most German tank aces were dead by their 2nd year. Wittmann kept accumulating kills. 143 confirmed, dozens more unconfirmed. Radley-Walters never heard Wittmann's name. Allied intelligence didn't brief tank crews about specific German commanders. They briefed them about tank types, capabilities, weak points, whether the 75mm gun could penetrate at various ranges. The answer was usually no. But Radley-Walters kept destroying German armor anyway. By late July, his count reached 11, then 13. He learned the Tiger's vulnerabilities: the air intake louvers on the rear deck, the turret ring where the armor was thinner, the lower hull sides at close range. Every German tank had weaknesses. You just had to survive long enough to exploit them. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers received 2 Sherman Fireflies in mid-July. These were standard Shermans modified with British 17-pounder guns, 76.2mm bore, 5 feet longer than the American 75, high-velocity armor-piercing rounds that could penetrate a Tiger's frontal armor at reasonable combat ranges. Finally, the Allies had something that could kill German heavy tanks from the front. Radley-Walters kept the Fireflies at the rear of his formations. They looked different. The barrel was obviously longer. German gunners learned to target fireflies first, kill the one tank in each troop that could hurt you, then mop up the regular Shermans at leisure. So the fireflies stayed back, hidden, used terrain, only revealed themselves when absolutely necessary. A squadron's kill count climbed. Radley-Walters destroyed a Panther near Tilly-la-Campagne, another Tiger south of Caen. His gunners were getting better. Faster target acquisition, better range estimation. The crews that survived the first month in Normandy became dangerous. They knew the ground. They knew the tactics. They knew how to stay alive. On August 7th, Allied Command launched Operation Totalize. The objective was breaking through German lines south of Caen, reaching Falaise, cutting off the German 7th Army before it could retreat east. The operation would involve 4 Canadian and British armored divisions, hundreds of tanks, thousands of infantry, heavy bomber support. The Germans knew the attack was coming. They'd been preparing defensive positions for weeks, minefields, anti-tank guns, hull-down positions for their panzers, and heavy SS Panzer Battalion 101 was moving into position. 7 Tigers, multiple Panzer IVs, self-propelled guns, all under the command of Standartenführer Kurt Meyer. Michael Wittmann volunteered to lead the counterattack. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers received their orders on August 7th. A Squadron would support 2nd Canadian Infantry Division, advance at dawn, secure the high ground near Saint-Aignan-de-Cramnil, hold it against counterattacks. Intelligence estimated moderate resistance, maybe some Panzer IVs, possibly a Panther or 2. Intelligence was wrong. The Germans were sending Tigers, and one of them belonged to the highest-scoring tank ace in the Wehrmacht. Radley-Walters didn't know any of this. He just knew that by dawn on August 8th, his squadron would be in position behind a chateau's stone walls near a village called Gomenil. 8 Shermans, 2 of them Fireflies, waiting for whatever the Germans sent. He had no idea he was about to face a legend. At 0600 on August 8, 1944, Radley-Walters positioned his 8 Shermans in the courtyard of Chateau Gomenil. His crews had knocked firing holes through the stone walls during the night. The chateau sat alongside Route Nationale 158, open fields to the east, the village of Saint-Aignan-de-Cramnil to the north. Perfect fields of fire. Terrible escape routes if things went wrong. Operation Totalize began at midnight with heavy bomber raids. Allied artillery pounded German positions for 6 hours. By dawn, Canadian and British infantry had secured the high ground. The first phase was succeeding. German resistance seemed lighter than expected. Then the radios crackled. German armor moving north from Saint-Thau. Multiple contacts. Heavy tanks. The 12th SS Panzer Division was counterattacking exactly where intelligence said they wouldn't. Radley-Walters watched the road through his commander's periscope. Dust clouds rising in the distance. The distinctive sound of German engines. Deep, powerful. Nothing like the high-pitched whine of American power plants. These were Tigers. He could hear them before he saw them. At 12:30, 7 Tigers emerged from the hedgerows near Saint-Thau. They advanced in 2 columns. One group moving through the center of the open ground, the others hugging the tree line to the right, slower, more cautious. Supporting infantry followed in half-tracks. Panzer IVs and self-propelled guns brought up the rear. The Tigers were 1,500 yards away, still out of effective range for the 75mm guns, but well within range of their 88mm cannons. Radley-Walters ordered his squadron to hold fire. Wait. Let them close. The Fireflies needed clear shots. Everyone else needed to get lucky. On his left flank, British tanks from 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry were positioned in orchards northeast of his position. They'd arrived during the night, dug in among the trees, another squadron waiting for the same Tigers. The Germans were advancing into a crossfire. They just didn't know it yet. The lead Tiger fired. The round screamed past the chateau and detonated somewhere behind A Squadron's position. The German gunner was ranging, testing, seeing where the Allied tanks were hiding. The second shot came closer. Fragments of stone exploded from the chateau's wall. The Germans had spotted the firing holes. Radley-Walters kept waiting. 1,200 yards? 1,100? The math was brutal, but simple. Every second the Tigers rolled forward improved his odds. every second they stayed alive decreased his. The lead Tiger was hull down now, using the terrain, only its turret visible. The commander knew what he was doing. 1,000 yards? Radley-Walters saw the British tanks opening fire from the orchards, flashes in the tree line, rounds impacting. One Tiger slewed sideways, track damage. Another kept advancing. The German formation was starting to spread out, reacting to threats from multiple directions. Still dangerous, still closing. At 800 yards, the Tigers began engaging targets more aggressively. A Sherman from the British squadron exploded. Another took a round through the engine deck. Black smoke, crew bailing out. The Germans were finding their range. Their optics were better. Their guns were bigger. Their armor was thicker. Radley-Walters watched the rightmost column. 5 Tigers moving slower than the others. The lead tank bore the number 007 painted on its turret. It was advancing past the chateau now. 500 yards? Close enough. He ordered A Squadron to open fire. 8 Shermans fired simultaneously. The stone walls erupted with muzzle flashes. Smoke. Noise. Chaos. The lead Tiger on the right took a hit and stopped moving. An SPG behind the Tigers exploded. A Panzer IV slewed off the road. The German formation was reacting, turning to face this new threat, trying to identify targets through the smoke and dust. But Tiger 007 kept rolling forward, its turret traversing, looking for whoever had just fired. Inside that tank was Michael Wittmann. 143 kills, Germany's greatest tank ace. And he had no idea a 24-year-old Canadian major was watching him through a periscope 400 yards away. At 12:32, one of Radley-Walters' Firefly crews fired. The 17-pounder round crossed 400 yards in less than a second. It punched through the left air intake of Tiger 007 directly behind the turret. The tank shuddered, stopped rolling. Black smoke poured from the engine deck. No crew emerged. The Tiger sat motionless on Route Nationale 158. Radley-Walters shifted his focus to the other targets. An SPG was trying to reverse behind the stalled Tiger. He ordered another volley. The SPG exploded, ammunition cooking off in a chain of detonations that sent the turret 20 feet into the air. The British tanks in the orchards were hammering the Tigers from the northeast. The crossfire was working. German tanks were burning across 500 yards of open ground. The rearmost Tiger in the column took multiple hits and stopped moving. Another tried to maneuver behind a hedgerow. A Firefly from the British squadron caught it broadside. Penetration. Catastrophic kill. 3 minutes into the engagement, Tiger 007 exploded. Not a normal fire. A massive detonation that hurled the turret completely off the hull. The blast wave shook the chateau walls. Ammunition storage had ignited. Fuel tanks ruptured. The entire vehicle disintegrated in a fireball that sent debris raining across the road. Radley-Walters kept his gunners firing. A Panzer IV was trying to escape south. 2 Shermans tracked it. Hits on the rear deck. Engine fire. Crew bailing out. Another Tiger was retreating towards Sinto. Damaged track. Moving slowly. The British caught it with multiple rounds. It ground to a halt and began burning. By 12:40, the German counterattack had collapsed. 7 Tigers had advanced north. 5 were destroyed or disabled. The survivors were retreating. Panzer IVs abandoned on the road. SPGs burning. Infantry scattered across the fields. The 12th SS Panzer Division's thrust had been shattered in 10 minutes of coordinated fire. A Squadron had lost no tanks. 2 crew members wounded from fragments. 1 Sherman damaged by a near miss, but every vehicle was still operational. The Fireflies had performed exactly as designed. High-velocity, armor-piercing rounds against heavy German armor at medium range. It worked. Radley-Walters radioed his after-action report to regimental headquarters. 5 enemy tanks destroyed, multiple SPGs and support vehicles. German counterattack repelled. He didn't mention Tiger 007 specifically. It was just another wreck on a road full of burning German equipment. He had no idea whose tank he'd just destroyed. No idea that inside the shattered hull of 007 were the remains of SS Hauptsturmführer Michael Wittmann, Germany's highest-scoring tank ace, 143 confirmed kills, dead at age 30. The Black Baron had been killed by a Canadian squadron he never knew was there. Wittmann's body wouldn't be found until 1983. Road construction crews discovered the remains. Forensic analysis confirmed his identity. By then, British tankers from Northamptonshire Yeomanry had claimed credit for killing him. Their gunner, Joe Eakins, had destroyed 3 Tigers that day. Everyone assumed one was Wittmann's, but battlefield analysis told a different story. The British were positioned over 1,000 yards away. The Canadians were at 500 yards or less. The angle of penetration on Tiger 007 matched the Canadian position, not the British. The fatal shot came from Chateau Gomesnil, from one of Radley-Walters' Fireflies. He wouldn't learn any of this for 45 years. In 1989, French civilians from the area approached him during a memorial visit, asked if he remembered August 8th, told him he'd killed Wittmann. Radley-Walters had never heard the name, didn't know German tank aces, didn't care. His job was destroying German armor, not learning their commanders' biographies. By mid-August 1944, his kill count had reached 14. The Falaise Gap was closing. German forces were trapped, trying to escape east. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers pursued them through collapsing defensive lines. More Panthers destroyed, more Tigers abandoned. The Wehrmacht was bleeding armor it couldn't replace. Radley-Walters had survived 3 months in Normandy, but the war wasn't over, and his luck was about to run out again. On August 21st, Radley-Walters' 2nd Sherman took a Panther round through the turret during the fighting near Tron. The shell penetrated the right side, killed his gunner, wounded Radley-Walters in the face and hands. Fragments sliced open his scalp. 36 stitches later, field medics cleared him to return to duty. He was back in a tank within 2 days. Caribou 3. His crews stopped naming the Shermans after the first 2 burned. Bad luck. Radley-Walters didn't care about names. He cared about crew survival, armor protection, ammunition storage. The wet stowage modification was finally arriving. Ammunition racks surrounded by water jackets. It reduced the chances of catastrophic fire after penetration. Not eliminated, reduced. The Falaise Gap closed on August 21st. 50,000 German soldiers surrendered. Thousands more died trying to escape. The roads were choked with destroyed vehicles, dead horses, abandoned equipment. Allied fighter bombers had turned the retreat into a massacre. Typhoons with rockets, P-47 Thunderbolts with bombs. German armor couldn't move during daylight without being destroyed from above. Radley-Walters added 3 more kills during the Falaise fighting. A Panther caught in the open, 2 Panzer IVs trying to cover the retreat. 16 confirmed, the highest count in the Canadian Armored Corps. The regiment promoted him to lieutenant colonel in the field. At 24, he was one of the youngest commanders in the Canadian Army. By September, the Allies were pushing into Belgium and Holland. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers advanced through liberated villages where civilians threw flowers at the tanks, offered wine, bread, anything they had. The reception lasted 3 days. Then the Germans counterattacked near the Scheldt estuary. More Tigers, more Panthers. The Wehrmacht was pulling units from the Eastern Front. Veteran crews, battle-hardened, fighting defensive actions where they knew the ground, where they could use terrain and ambush tactics. The easy victories of August were over. Radley-Walters' 3rd Sherman was destroyed in October near the Leopold Canal, not by a tank, by a mine. His scout car hit a Teller mine during reconnaissance. The blast knocked him unconscious, threw him 15 feet, killed the driver, wounded 2 others. When he woke up in a field hospital, his ears were bleeding. Concussion, possible skull fracture. The doctors wanted to evacuate him to England. He refused. Returned to the regiment after a week, took command of Caribou 4. The crews had started calling every tank Caribou, regardless of what the quartermaster painted on the hull. If Rad was in it, it was Caribou. Simple as that. By November, his kill count reached 17. A Tiger near Nijmegen, caught from behind during a German withdrawal. The crew bailed out before the ammunition exploded. Smart. Most German tankers were learning that survival mattered more than heroism. The war was lost. Everyone knew it. Fighting to the death accomplished nothing. Winter came early in 1944. Snow, freezing rain, mud that stopped tanks better than any mine. The advance slowed. German resistance stiffened. They were defending their homeland now. Every kilometer cost more Allied lives. On December 16th, the Germans launched their final major offensive in the west, the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge. 50 divisions attacking through fog and snow, catching American forces by surprise, destroying hundreds of vehicles, creating chaos across a 100-mile front. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers were in Holland, too far north to reach the Ardennes quickly, but German attacks were spreading, probing, testing, looking for weaknesses. A Panther company hit Canadian positions near Grosbeak on December 20th. Radley-Walters engaged at 700 yards. His gunner fired 3 rounds. 2 hits. The Panther slewed sideways. Turret jammed. Crew evacuating. His 18th confirmed kill. The highest count of any Western Allied tank commander. A record he'd hold for the rest of the war. But he still had 5 months of fighting ahead, and Germany wasn't surrendering yet. By January 1945, the Sherbrooke Fusiliers were advancing into Germany itself, the Rhine River crossings, the industrial cities of the Ruhr, villages that looked nothing like France or Belgium. No cheering civilians, no flowers, just silence. Fear. White flags hanging from windows. German resistance was collapsing. Not everywhere, not all at once, but the pattern was clear. Fewer counterattacks, more surrenders. Tank crews abandoning their Panthers and Tigers because there was no fuel, no ammunition, no spare parts. The Wehrmacht was dying from logistical starvation. Radley-Walters didn't add to his kill count after December, not because the fighting stopped, because German armor stopped appearing. The tanks he encountered were already disabled, abandoned, pushed off roads to clear traffic. The Luftwaffe was gone. Allied aircraft owned the skies. German armor couldn't move during daylight without being destroyed from above before any ground engagement began. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers crossed the Rhine in March, advanced through the Ruhr pocket in April, encountered thousands of German soldiers walking west to surrender to the Americans or Canadians, anything to avoid the Soviets approaching from the east. Most were teenagers or men over 40. The veterans were dead, or in Soviet prison camps, or scattered across a continent. On May 7, 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally. The war in Europe was over. Radley-Walters was 25 years old, a lieutenant colonel commanding a regiment, 18 confirmed tank kills, dozens of other armored vehicles destroyed, 3 Shermans lost under his command, 2 wounds, 1 concussion. He'd survived 56 continuous days of combat in Normandy, 9 months of additional fighting across France, Belgium, Holland, and Germany. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers became part of the Allied occupation force in Germany, garrison duty, policing displaced persons, preventing revenge killings. Radley-Walters spent July 1945 learning how to be a peacetime officer, training replacements who'd never seen combat, processing paperwork, missing the adrenaline and terror and clarity of war. The Canadian government awarded him the Distinguished Service Order and Military Cross, recognizing his leadership and gallantry as a squadron commander. The citations mentioned specific actions: the assault on Caen in July, the Falaise Gap in August, multiple engagements where his tactical decisions saved lives, protected infantry, accomplished objectives against superior German armor. He returned to Canada in 1946, married Patricia. They had 4 sons. Radley-Walters called them the Tank Crew. He stayed in the army, rose through the ranks, served in peacekeeping missions in Cyprus and Egypt, became commanding officer of the 8th Canadian Hussars in 1957, attended the NATO Defense College in Paris, promoted to colonel, then brigadier general, retired in 1974 after 34 years of service. The French government made him an officer of the Legion of Honor. Canada appointed him commander of military merit. In 2004, the town of Buron in Normandy renamed a small park in his honor, Park Radley-Walters, a commemorative plaque, benches, shade trees, a memorial to the man who'd helped liberate them 60 years earlier. He died on April 21, 2015, age 95, buried in St. Paul's Anglican Church Cemetery in Percé, Quebec, near where he was born. The Globe and Mail called him the most respected battlefield commander in the Royal Canadian Armoured Corps. Military historian Terry Kopp said he emerged from Normandy as the best-known tank ace in Canadian history. But most people outside military circles never heard his name, never learned about the infantry officer who'd never seen a tank before 1942, who destroyed 18 German tanks, who survived impossible odds, who helped defeat the Wehrmacht one engagement at a time. His story nearly disappeared into silence, like so many others from that war. But not quite. Not yet. Sydney Radley-Walters' story remained largely unknown outside Canada for decades. No Hollywood movies, no best-selling books, just regimental histories and military archives. The occasional mention in academic studies about tank warfare, a footnote in histories of the Normandy campaign. The controversy about Michael Whitman's death kept his name alive in certain circles. Military historians debated the evidence. British veterans insisted Joe Eakins made the kill. Canadian veterans remembered the engagement differently. Battlefield analysis favored the Canadian position. Shorter range, better angle, forensic evidence from Tiger 007's hull. But Radley-Walters never claimed Whitman, never promoted the controversy. When journalists asked him about it in his later years, he gave the same answer every time. He destroyed German tanks. That was his job. Whose tank? What commander? It didn't matter. The war was about survival, about protecting his crews, about accomplishing the mission. That attitude defined his entire career. He wasn't fighting for glory, for records, for recognition. He was fighting because young men were dying in Shermans that couldn't match German armor, because infantry needed tank support, because the job had to be done regardless of the odds. His crews remembered him differently than the official citation suggested. They remembered a commander who made them sleep, who prioritized crew survival over aggressive tactics, who understood that exhausted tankers made fatal mistakes, who knew that getting his people home mattered more than adding to his kill count. The World of Tanks video game created a medal in his honor, the Radley-Walters Medal, awarded for destroying 8 or 9 enemy vehicles in a single battle. Millions of players earned it. Most never knew the man behind the name, never knew he'd been an infantry officer who learned tanks by reading manuals, who survived 3 tanks destroyed under him, who became the top Western Allied tank ace despite never having seen armor before 1942. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about tankers who beat impossible odds with tactics and courage. Real people. Real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer, you're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Sydney Radley-Walters doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.